Welcome into another edition of Carroll's Cadence. I'm your host, Brandon Carroll, the lead reporter for allgators.com, a Sports Illustrated affiliate with Fan Nation. And football is officially back, baby. After a long wait, we are here. We've returned to college football season, and the slate of games on kickoff weekend was just too good for me to pass up. I know this is a Florida Gators centered show. However, we're going national, baby. For the first time in show history, we are looking at the landscape of college football as a whole. And today's that day. So we're going to outline some winners and losers. We're going to look at a game of the week. And we're also going to predict one of the biggest games in potentially the college football season as a whole in week 2 at the end of the show. Before we get started, make sure to just wear out that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And don't worry, regularly scheduled programming with the Florida Gators will return on Friday as we overview their matchup with McNeese, including what they need to do in order to overcome a poor start to the season in Salt Lake City. So just for now, sit back, relax. Let's talk about college football as a whole because week 1 brought some unexpected electricity to the gridiron. And despite just being one contest into the season, one contest between ranked opponents, which we'll touch on later, it was some fun football, but none were quite as entertaining as Friday night's Aflac kickoff matchup in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, between the Louisville Cardinals and the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And before we get into that, I just want to say I enjoyed when I was in Salt Lake being able to use this talking stick here, being able to kind of just feel free and not, have my mic just sitting right here. So we're gonna rock out with the talking stick until further notice. If you don't like it, then I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. Get used to it. But Carroll's Cadence's game of the week was that Louisville versus Georgia Tech matchup. And this one felt like a college basketball game of sorts because it was a game of runs. You had Louisville open up the game with the 6-0 run. 2 straight field goals to take a early lead, not commanding, but an early one. And from there, you saw Georgia Tech kind of break out. You saw, okay, they're starting to get this thing together. Hayes King's playing really well in this stretch. And they scored 4 touchdowns in the second quarter alone. They just had an outburst of offensive production in that second quarter. And that's really the first time we've seen that from Georgia Tech in quite some time, of just being able to be so consistent. And I think that's something Brent Key has really brought to this team and will continue to bring to this team as he kind of leads them into the future and leads this Yellow Jackets program to where they want to be, because they haven't been what they used to be in quite some time. And they feel that a former player in Brent Key can kind of bring them back to that promised land. So as a result, Georgia Tech went into the break leading Louisville 28-13. It looked as if they had full control of the game. Like I said, Hayes King was playing good football. He was playing sound. He was playing purposeful football. It looked like they were just moving the offense, and they always had a purpose for how they were doing it in that second quarter. Then Jamari Thrash hit. That boy, dog. Jamari Thrash was what won Louisville this game. It's what kind of gave them that edge. And that was really what the story was out of halftime for this contest in general. They found a groove offensively, post 6 unanswered scores throughout. Were able to go up kind of 39-28, give themselves a bit of a cushion in that late stage. Thrash was the focal point of the offense as a whole. And they just looked as if they were the ones that had the momentum. They had the rhythm. They had that purpose offensively. And I like that both of these teams, because both of these teams are kind of on the rise here in college football. And not to say that they're going to ever be contenders, but they're both trying to find themselves. They're both trying to find their footing with new coaches, with new leadership, with the new era of how they want to play football. And I think both of them saw flashes of it. Georgia Tech saw flashes in the second quarter of, okay, this is what we can be. We just have to make it consistent. Louisville saw that later in the game and said, okay, this is what we can be. We just have to find a way to do this earlier on. And it just felt that once they found Thrash, once they found that dude that they could just give the ball whenever they needed to be able to find yardage, find scores, just be explosive, they took off. He had 7 receptions for 88 yards and 2 scores. Georgia State transfer who was really kind of flew under the radar, but he's not under the radar anymore. Nah. He is on the radar. He's on it because teams now, just seeing that week 1 matchup, are going to key in on him, knowing that he is going to be a focal point for this offense moving forward. It just felt more explosive when the ball was in his hands. It felt more dynamic with the ball in his hands, and they rode that to a comeback victory. When they were down 28-13 going into halftime, they ended up winning 39-34 against a Georgia Tech squad, like I said, looked improved from what it was a season ago, even though it wasn't able to close. It was better in terms of just from start to finish. They looked as if it was a legitimate product on the field. And as a result, this was just an entertaining matchup between two programs, like I said earlier, who are just trying to find their footing after years of failure. Obviously, Louisville has been more up and down. Georgia Tech's been a steady bottom feeder in that ACC. But I like where Georgia Tech is headed under Brent Key. I think they played spirited ball for him at the end of last year. I think that it was the right decision hiring him full time to replace Jeff Collins there as the head coach in Atlanta. They still came up short, and showing that there's the continued need for the rebuild for the Yellow Jackets moving forward. But I do like the direction they're headed in. It's far from completion. It is not even close to completion. Obviously, every team wants to rebuild and become a powerhouse, but that isn't feasible for every single program. I think Georgia Tech being a 7-8 win team per season would be a drastic step forward for this team, for this program. And I think that that's the direction they're headed. I don't think it comes this year. It might not even come next year, but I do like the direction Brent Key and co are moving as of right now. Meanwhile, while it wasn't necessarily a clean product for Jeff Brom in his first game back at his alma mater as the head coach, I think they found something with Jamari Thrash. And I know he's going to be a name that comes up pretty frequently moving forward because he's a dog. He's a guy. He is a hooper. They were hooping, and Jamari Thrash is the reason that they were hooping. So they have a consistent feature of this offense moving forward. He's a player that needs to get the ball in a double-digit volume this year, just touches. He needs to touch the ball at least 10 times, whether that comes traditionally as a wideout running, streaking routes down the field, intermediate, or if he takes a screen, jet sweep, shoot, even put him in the backfield. Just give Jamari Thrash the football and let him cook, because he can be a spark to that rushing game. He can be a spark to this offense, and that can really be what Jeff Brom needs to find his wheels early in year one as the Louisville head coach. But I thought they got off to a great start. Obviously, we're able to kind of take adversity in stride early in that game, and we're able to perform in a way that gives them the ability to move forward as a team that can be dangerous this year, in terms of a team that plays spoiler for some others looking to kind of hover around that 8-9 win mark in 2020. Thrash was a major winner of the weekend. He made his name known, and you're not going to forget it if you watch this show. That's for sure. But speaking of winners, let's talk about two programs in particular who proved to be massive winners during the first full weekend of the college football season. And yes, we're going to start with that team out west. No one expected them to be good. No one expected them to win their first game, but they did. They're coached by Deion Sanders, one of the greatest players of all time. He's never failed at any level he's been at, whether it's playing, coaching. He's always been a winner. And Saturday was no different. Now, the 22nd ranked team in the nation, the Colorado Buffaloes, led by Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Edwards, they took care of business. Deion, I'm going to tell you what, I'm familiar with your game. I'm familiar with it. I know what you've done. I know what you've accomplished. But I'd be lying if I say I wasn't surprised. I wasn't necessarily a hater. I kind of wanted to see what y'all are able to do. But I did not expect the turnaround that y'all were able to give on Saturday. I did not expect it to come that quickly. I did not expect the Colorado Buffaloes, of all teams, to take it to the college football playoff runner-up from a season ago. I did not. And I think if someone says they did, they expected them to go in and do that, they'd be lying. You could be hopeful. You can be optimistic that they could. No one expected it to do it, but that's exactly what they did. They took it to them. And there are three key pieces to that puzzle. And it starts with Travis Hunter. And Hunter was kind of a piece that when I first started covering recruiting, he was coming out. It was his class. And I could just see from watching him on film and the limited exposure I did see from him in person that he was just different from the dudes he played against. He put that on notice immediately. As soon as he stepped on the field, you could tell, yeah, this dude's different. Obviously, he ended up signing with Jackson State. One of the craziest endings to a recruitment I've seen. Like I said, I haven't been covering it that long, but that was insane. Uh, so he was somewhat removed from that national spotlight by going to Jackson State for a year. And so most people, or there's a large collection of people who didn't really see his progression from when he left high school to now because of that one season that he wasn't in the national spotlight. He was at Jackson State. Sure, they had televised games. He really put Jackson State on the map in terms of people wanted to tune in to actually watch this team. Him and Dion, him and Shador were the ones to kind of give Jackson State their name. And now they've moved into the Power 5 level where they're going to get nationally televised games week in, week out. But if you kept up with his performance while at Jackson State, you'd know Saturday's outing wasn't a fluke. He is the real deal. His athleticism, his length, body control, and just knowledge of football is up there with the elites in the game. He's with the top tier guys, the guys at Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. He's there. And for a while, I was convinced that he should focus solely on the wide receiver position because he's so dynamic. He's so talented as a wideout, as a pass catcher, that I was like, yeah, there's no way he can come close to doing that on the defensive side of the ball. And while I still believe that to be true as to an extent that he is better as a wide receiver than he is as a defensive back, golly, he proved to be pretty darn good at both on Saturday against heightened competition during his 129 total snaps per Pro Football Focus against the Hypnotoad. This man accounted for 11 receptions, 119 yards. He had a long of 43. And then you flip to the defensive side of the football, where he accounted for 3 tackles, 1 pass breakup, and an interception. And that interception was insane. Full diving layout on a screen pass to jump it. Super quick. Such a bang play that he was able to make possible because he's Travis Hunter. Then you flip to the offensive side of the football. Well, he's on the offensive side of the football too, but you flip to the leader of that offense in Shador Sanders, the man who's slinging the rock all around the yard. 510 yards and 4 touchdowns on 80% completion is one heck of a way for Mr. Shador Sanders to introduce himself to the FBS college football world. And it couldn't have gone much better. He was composed, played smart with the football, showed off that pass first nature that he's really prided himself on. He said that that's what I want to be. We know he has athleticism. We know he can use his legs if he needs to, but he didn't need to. He showed that I can get it done as a pocket passer. He has a strong arm coupled with the ability to kind of put touch on the ball if needed. Placement is beautiful. That ball placement is incredible. He can fit it into tight windows. He wasn't just efficient. No, he wasn't a game manager for them. He was dominant. 500 yards doesn't come by accident. And given who his daddy is, I am not surprised. It's already started to earn him some draft buzz. And he's on, people have started to say, oh, yeah, he's fringe first round territory. Pump the brakes there because it's only one game. But he did show that the highs, the ceiling, the ability to play up to his opponent, it's there. So I understand the draft buzz. I understand people being intrigued. But I wouldn't necessarily say he's there yet because he's not. But if he stacks more good days, he can reach that status. Because, like I said, we saw that the highs, the ceiling, it's legit. Number 3, Dylan Edwards. If you know me or follow me on Twitter, you'd know I will take credit for seeing this coming. Because you'd know Dylan Edwards was arguably my favorite player in that 2023 recruiting cycle, regardless of where they were committed, what their ranking was, etc. Because I met him initially at the Under Armour Future 50 event. And first of all, great kid. But he just moved different from everyone out there. A combination of the nation's best recruits. And Dylan Edwards was flying by him. He was moving at a different pace than the rest. And he moved at a different pace than the rest on Saturday. There wasn't a soul on that football field for Colorado or for TCU that was going to be able to keep up with him when he was in the open field. And that's why he scored 4 touchdowns in his debut. That's why he went for a 70-plus yarder, because he can just move different from everybody else. And Dion, having had him on his team when he was in he was like 4 or 6 years old. Dion's coaching this dude in Pee Wee. Just so happens to be one of the best players in the nation coming out. As soon as Dion gets a Colorado coaching job, says, "Hey, Dylan, let's go play at Colorado." Dylan's like, "Yes, sir. Let's rock." They're rocking. They are rocking. And now I'm not going to sit here and act like everything's sunshine and rainbows with the Colorado Buffaloes, because I know there's still plenty of issues they need to fix before the Buffs are legit. The Buffs are legit. This win could cloud some of the team's deficiencies that we saw. Like, this defense still allowed 42 points to TCU. It gave up 554 yards, split almost right down the middle between rush and pass. They're going to struggle against opposing offenses, it seems. They're going to have a hard time stopping these dynamic offenses that they're going to face. And in the Pac-12 right now, these offenses might be better than some others around the country because the quarterback play in the Pac-12 is higher than any other conference. But man, at the end of the day, when that air starts to get thick and it's getting hard to breathe, and you're like, all right, we got to look for something. Look to Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Edwards, and Travis Hunter on offense, because they got some absolute hoopers who are going to give them a chance to post points with any team they face. They might not be elite. They might not be a contender, but they're going to be appointment television from now until they take their final snap of the season. Dion said it best. The Buffs are no longer coming. The Buffs are here, and they are electric. Speaking of electric, the Florida State Seminoles were electric on Sunday night. They lived up to that offseason hype. We heard all offseason, Florida State is a college football playoff contender. A lot of people said, I need to see it to believe it. Just because of the status of Florida State over the past few years, it's been down significantly. However, despite some sloppiness throughout really the first 3 quarters, Florida State figured that thing out and started to fire. And when they started to fire, LSU had nothing for them. They could not contain that offense of Florida State, made up of some very talented transfers, one of which I'll talk about in just a moment. But you look at how Florida State's really been able to build this team, and it's been impressive. They have been one of the, if not the best, transfer portal squads, transfer portal coaching staffs in the nation since it opened. They have figured out the formula to get guys who can contribute immediately, and they have built a contender out of it, because they are a contender to play in the college football playoff this year, and there's no other way around it. They are legit. Florida State is. There are several dudes that are going to make massive impacts for Florida State this season. You have obviously Jared Verse and Johnny Wilson, who were there last year, who are going to kind of be the leaders of this team moving forward. You have obviously Jordan Travis, who's continuously gotten better as his collegiate careers went on. He's been the piece that's really elevated them to this level. You've seen that progression from him, from being a run-first quarterback who was at times a liability throwing the football, but now he's one of the best college football quarterbacks in the nation, and you're looking at him to win you games and be that game-changing piece, which he has shown he can be time and time again. Then you add a Keon Coleman to his arsenal, who just lit up the stat sheet and proved to be that missing explosive piece in an already talented offense to move forward and give this squad an opportunity to actually compete with the Georgias, with the Michigans, with the Alabamas, the Ohio States this season, with the Clemsons in their own conference, which I'll talk about Clemson in a minute. There's a lot of things trending in the right direction for Florida State, and it's not just offensive. You look at the defensive side of the ball, and that secondary is legit. That secondary proved to shut down this LSU receiving core, which is usually, and it still garnered buzz this offseason, of being one of the best in college football. LSU is consistently known for being that team with the best skill position players in college football, or at least one of the best. They didn't look like that on Sunday because Florida State shut them down. And then that defensive line, proved to be equally as dominant inside as it was outside. We know Jared Verse is going to get after the quarterback. But that interior shut LSU down in that way. And after so long, LSU's defense broke and LSU's offense wasn't able to contend with FSU. FSU outmatched LSU. And there was a feeling that was going to be a possibility heading into Camping World Stadium on Sunday night, that FSU had a matchup advantage over the Tigers. But no one expected it to be like that. FSU is real. FSU has lived up to that offseason hype, that offseason praise. And Mike Norvell has himself a squad in 2023. If I had to pick right now, FSU is playing in the college football playoff this year. Now, they have to get past Clemson, likely twice. But there's a very good opportunity for the Seminoles to be representing the ACC in the college football playoff in 2023. And an honorable mention of winners this weekend is Cincinnati quarterback Emory Jones. It's not a team, and I'm not going to talk too much about him. But 7 touchdowns? That boy was hooping. That boy was getting after it. 7 touchdowns in his debut for Cincinnati. Seems pretty good to me. Now we've switched it into losers. And I just talked about FSU being a winner, having to contend with Clemson likely twice. Once is going to be in Death Valley. And it wasn't in Death Valley, but Clemson did not look great in week 1 against Duke. 24-7 loss in the season opener. And really, their offense sputtered under Cade Klubnik's leadership and looked sluggish as it did a season ago under DJ Uiagalelei. And that was supposed to be a major fix for them, is getting in that new piece at quarterback, obviously transitioning from one offensive coordinator to another under Garrett Riley. It was supposed to be a major fix, but it was not. The defense did its part throughout most of the game, and while the offense largely failed to produce at a rate conducive for success. But I just want to sit here and say that the notion that the offensive production in terms of Clemson's ability to just churn out yardage or have success putting itself in scoring positions was the major problem. That's false. That's not true. Because at least in the second half, the offensive production, they were moving the football. They were churning out yards. It was fruitful. And the Tigers found success both on the ground and through the air. Will Shipley and Phil Maffa, they proved to be a capable backfield tandem for now and moving forward throughout the rest of the season. Klubnik started to settle in the final 30, just taking what the defense gives him, and kind of they moved more methodically than a lot of people expected, but they were moving. But it didn't really matter. Before this game, Dabo Swinney, as the head coach at Clemson, was 108-0 in games where Clemson rushed over 200 yards and threw for over 200 yards. They're now 108-1. And the inopportune turnovers are to blame. Clemson had 3 on the night, 2 of which came within the Duke 10-yard line. One came on the 7, and one came right up on the goal line at the 1-yard line on back-to-back drives with the opportunity for Clemson to close the lead, take the lead. They were unable to do it, and that lost them the game. Clemson struggled to hold on to the rock on Monday night. And coming into this year, I personally expected Clemson to be a top college football as a legitimate contender for the title, as a team that if it was really going to be which team can win in Charlotte, Florida State or Clemson, which one is going to take that step into the college football playoff. And like I said, this year it's the landscape of college football is so much more open than it has been in years past. And I said it in my SEC preview show. That's because quarterback turnover is at an all-time high. We look across the nation. There are new guys in new places everywhere. Pac-12 largely intact. Other than that, it is a bunch of new for quarterbacks in college football. So then you look at the hire of Garrett Riley, changing of the guard at the quarterback for Clemson from a guy that really in DJ Uiagalelei, where he really kind of hit his plateau for Clemson, to a young up and coming potential star in Cade Klubnik, maintained stoutness defensively. It seemed as if it was the recipe for them to take advantage and kind of reassert themselves onto that national stage this year, which they haven't done since Trevor Lawrence left for the NFL. But they didn't really show that that's going to be the case against Duke. And now it's one performance. I'm not going to sit here and make overarching takes or reactionary takes. We can make observations, but we're not going to draw conclusions after 1 week. But I'm not necessarily convinced that they are a contender anymore. This one's concerning. It was a concerning loss. It was not one we've come to expect from the Tigers, from Dabo Swinney. And they got to figure it out, and they got to figure it out fast. And then another loser. And this one's going to be weird. You're going to be like, why is he talking about this? But not every loser is built the same. All right. Arkansas State was a major loser of week 1. And you're like, Arkansas State? Why is he talking about Arkansas State? Because, sure, the Red Wolves are not a powerhouse program. They're not ever going to be a powerhouse program. But they took a beating on Saturday against Oklahoma. And just because Arkansas State's a loser doesn't necessarily make Oklahoma a winner, because that's not how this works. But Oklahoma is supposed to beat an Arkansas State handedly, as they did. The Red Wolves are coming off a 3-8 season in 2022, really just looking for any sliver of hope to continue forward with this year, and they didn't get that. They didn't even come close to getting that. The Sooners came out of the gates ready to rock this year. They started to really embody the physicality and toughness everyone's expected from a Brent Venables coach squad when he took over last season. They expected him to come in and bring what he brought to Clemson's defense for so long, in that they're going to punch you in the mouth. They're going to come out and they're going to punch you in the mouth. And they came out and did that. And you look at the Big 12, it's relatively open for the taking. Maybe we get a conference deciding matchup in the Red River rivalry. Try saying that 3 times fast. I can't. On October 7th, between them and Texas, we might get the decider for the Big 12. But this isn't about Oklahoma being a winner. This is about Arkansas State being a big old fat loser. Because I can't think of a worse way to start the year than getting beat 73-0 in the opening contest of the season, having 208 yards to your name, really no score to build on, just unprepared for that physicality and toughness that I talked about a minute ago. And it was bad. But the score wasn't the worst part. To make matters worse, head coach Butch Jones, who, yes, it's the same guy who coached at Tennessee, has experience at the SEC level, has gotten his guys ready to perform at the pinnacle of college football, was overcome with emotion on the sideline because of the whooping that his team was receiving. Like, they were getting the break speed off of them so badly that Butch Jones burst into tears on the sideline. Oklahoma sent that man into tears, bro. Tears. Like real tears falling down his face. That's crazy. That's crazy. How do you get that image out of your head as one of his players going into next week? Like, dang, like we really let him down that much that he started crying on the sideline. I mean, golly, I understand wanting to show passion, and I'm not necessarily going to fault him for being overcome with that emotion in the time, because you prepare all off season to potentially have a chance or just kind of show that you belong on the same field with Oklahoma, and then they prove to you that you do not. That's a lot to take. That's a lot to take in at one time. And like I said, I understand wanting to show the guys he cares. I understand wanting to kind of show that you're passionate and you're not. This is not what you're willing to showcase. But golly, breaking down on the sidelines, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I don't know how you parlay this into something that gives them the ability to take a step forward in the coming weeks. Like I said, I haven't seen anything like this happen ever. And I bet it will be a while, if at all, before I see it happen again. Just got to keep the tears in your eyes, man. Keep tears in your eyes. Now, there's one game this week that's going to captivate the nation. It is going to be everything. If your team has played earlier in the day, this will be on your TV. I guarantee it. If your team's playing at the same time, get your tablet or phone ready because two of the most popular programs in the country are going to go at it on prime time on Saturday night. Alabama and Texas, part 2. Here we go. Last year, this was one of the best games in college football really throughout the season. There were some great games in college football last year. Alabama, Texas, just because it happened earlier in the year, kind of fell and rode under the radar, but it was a great contest. It was a fantastic matchup between two teams that really are at different stages in their program right now. Alabama is the pinnacle of the sport, chased really only by Georgia. If and Georgia's probably ahead of them now, but it is them two at the top. And Texas is a team that formerly used to be at the top, but have struggled to kind of reassume themselves into that position. They've struggled to get back, for a lack of a better term. But you see now there's an opportunity. There's a real opportunity for Texas to kind of make that assertion against Alabama because Texas has the pieces. They have garnered the pieces necessary to kind of make an impact on the college football landscape this year. Or at least they feel they do. I think they do. I think they have the pieces necessary. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to result in much, but they have the talent. Alabama knows they have the talent. Alabama knows we always have an opportunity to compete. We always have an opportunity to contend against any team that we face and for a national title year in and year out. So now you get these two teams battling, and it's the established versus the up and coming. Again, part 2. And I think that there's a very good possibility that this one is a lot tighter than a lot of people expect. And sure, I know there's people saying, yeah, Texas is going to take this one. Alabama's going to, it's going to be close. But then there's also people saying, yeah, last year was Texas's chance, which if you're counting the home field advantage aspect, sure, I think that was their chance. Alabama's only lost 5 games inside Bryant-Denny Stadium over the past 15 years. So it's an uphill battle to climb for sure. That goes without saying. But like I said earlier, Texas has them pieces. They have a quarterback. Sure, they lost Bijan Robinson to the NFL. He would be a massive help in this game. But I think Texas has the firepower to contend with Alabama. Because Alabama's offense is not the same as it has been in years past. They have kind of reverted back to what they were back in the mid 2010s, where they're going to rely heavily on that rushing game. Jalen Milroe proved that he can get it done as the man behind center in week 1. Sure, it was against Middle Tennessee State, but he showed he can be dynamic, not just rushing the football, which he was excellent at, but he can make the throws needed to elevate this Alabama team. But it's just not going to come at the clip that Bryce Young would allow for. So you have Texas, who is potentially put in a position where they can score points quickly, and you get a bit of a, okay, maybe this is a legitimate chance for Texas to topple one of the powerhouses in college football. I think it is. I think it is a chance for Texas to do so. Now, last week, Texas, bit concerning against Rice. I do think that a lot of the offense was vanilla, knowing that you can take down a Rice without having to really open it up to show Alabama everything that's in your playbook. Steve Sarkisian knows that if Nick Saban gets a full look, if that Alabama staff gets a full look at what they want to do, it could be a long day for them because Alabama's defense is legit. That defense is, they're playing joyless murder ball, as Dallas Turner likes to say. It could be a long day, but I don't think they showed that. I don't think they gave them enough to really understand what Texas is going to hit them with. Sure, they know the pieces, they know the guys they have to limit, But there's a lot of things that goes into Texas's game plan that I think gives them at least the ability to contend with an Alabama. Now, you look at Alabama, like I said, that defense is legit. The rushing game is legit. The offensive line is inexperienced, but I think that they have some dudes up front. Tyler Booker being namely, he's a dog. Tyler Booker is one of the best linemen in college football right now, and he kind of anchors that offensive line for Alabama to be a hard-nosed rushing team, run first team. And given the circumstances, this one's going to be close. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. But in the end, I think Jalen Milroe is able to elevate Bama because of the pieces around him in a way that allows Bama to pull it out at home in a hostile environment for Texas and kind of give them a introductory taste to what life in the SEC is like. I think that there's a lot riding for Texas. If they're able to win this game, they kind of kickstart their journey into the SEC next season. But I do think Bama has a upper hand as of right now still. Even with the quarterback uncertainty that they possess, they're in a position, they know how to win the big games. They know how to take it to a Texas. And I think they do that in a way that kind of shows that they are still one of the major players in college football. I think in this contest, they kind of say like, hey, we're still here. We're still Bama. Don't count us out. And Jalen Milroe, in the process of doing that, asserts himself as someone that can help Bama win games. He's not going to lose them games. He's going to be efficient. He's going to be productive. And he's going to bring a dual threat ability to the field that shows something different from what we've seen from Alabama in years past. You got a guy who can really assert himself athletically, which gives Bama a really good chance to take down a Texas team that I don't think is going to be ready for that. If I had to predict, I would say that Alabama walks out of Bryant-Denny Stadium as victors. 28-24 against Texas. I think it's, like I said, I think it's close. I think Texas shows they have the pieces, the talent, the guys with the traits that you need to perform at a high level. I think Texas shows that they have it. I just don't think they're at that spot yet to produce against a team like Alabama, who's going to be so hard to score on, while that offense provides enough supplement to win games like this one throughout. Thank you for watching another episode of Carroll's Cadence. My name is Brandon Carroll. Like I said earlier, the lead reporter for allgators.com, a Sports Illustrated Fan Nation affiliate. I hope you enjoyed our national topics show. I know it was different from what we are regularly discussing on this channel, but let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed this and you enjoyed my commentary on the nation as a whole. We will be back to regularly scheduled programming on Friday as I preview the Florida Gators matchup against McNeese on Saturday night. I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. Signing off here from Carroll's Cadence, I'm Brandon Carroll, and I will catch y'all on Friday.